Okay, so let's start in a garage in California. You've got two young guys who aren't just soldering together a computer, they're building a whole new philosophy. It's an idea that would create a company, drive it to the edge of total collapse, and then bring it back to become one of the most powerful forces our world has ever seen. This is the whole story of Apple.
This was it. This was Apple's guiding principle, their North Star, right from day one. It was never about the specs or the memory. It was about making tools that just felt right, intuitive, personal, almost like a part of you. This one idea is the key to everything that follows. But how do you put a price tag on a philosophy?
Well, this is one way to do it. $3 trillion. That's the mind-boggling valuation Apple has hit. So the big question we're tackling here is pretty simple. How in the world did that idea about the human spirit turn into this number?
All right, so to figure that out, we have to go right back to the beginning, back to the explosive, almost innocent success of the early days. When Apple wasn't just another company, it was a full-blown revolution. With the Apple II, they didn't just sell a machine. They literally created the personal computer market as we know it. I mean, just look at these numbers from their IPO back in 1980. They were already pulling in over $100 million in revenue, turning a nice profit, and had pretty much zero debt. They were flying high. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. That incredible, blazing hot start, it actually planted the seeds for what would become a near-total collapse. The story is about to take a very dark turn. So in 1984, the Macintosh arrives and changes everything with its graphical interface. But behind the scenes, the company was a mess of infighting. And just a year later, its own visionary co-founder, Steve Jobs, gets forced out. For the next 10 years, Apple just completely lost its way. They were making everything, printers, digital cameras, the infamous Newton, while their biggest rival, Microsoft, was just eating their lunch and taking over the entire market. By the mid-90s, things were beyond bad. We're not talking about a rough quarter here. The company that basically started the PC revolution was just 90 days, 3 months away from going completely bankrupt. This was a death spiral. And if you want to see what a death spiral looks like on a balance sheet, well, here it is. In 1996 alone, Apple lost a jaw-dropping $816 million. The dream had become an absolute financial nightmare. This slide right here, this is rock bottom. Yeah, they were still bringing in a lot of revenue, but they were hemorrhaging cash and were buried under almost $1 billion of debt. By all accounts, it was over. Game over. Or so everyone thought. This is where we get to the turnaround, and honestly, it might be the greatest comeback story in the history of business. The founder comes home, and absolutely everything is about to change. This was so much more than just a clever ad campaign. This was a declaration. It was a signal to the entire world, and maybe more importantly to everyone inside Apple, that the old, confused, bloated company was dead. This was a return to their rebellious soul. So when Steve Jobs came back, he had a brutally simple plan. First, he just slashed the product line down to only 4 computers. 4. Then he laid out this vision for the Mac to be the digital hub for your life. And maybe most importantly, he and a guy named Tim Cook completely reinvented their supply chain. This laid the foundation for everything that was to come. And here are the results just a few years later. The iPod was an absolute smash hit. And suddenly, Apple was making money again. The debt was wiped out, and the company started building up that famous mountain of cash. The comeback was very, very real. So the company was saved, but Apple wasn't just happy to be back in the game. They were now getting ready to completely rewrite the rules for entire industries. Act 2 was about to start, and it was going to be even bigger than Act 1. In 2007, the iPhone launched. It wasn't just a new phone. It was a computer in your pocket that literally changed modern life. A year later, the App Store created a whole new economy out of thin air. Then in 2010, the iPad came along and created a brand new category of device. This was Apple at its most powerful, its most disruptive. And this just perfectly shows the financial power of that era. Just look at the insane growth. Revenue skyrockets to over $100 billion. Profit is nearly $26 billion. And most importantly, look at the debt. 0. They had built an untouchable financial fortress. After the passing of Steve Jobs, the company's strategy began to evolve once again. The focus shifted from creating revolutionary hit products to building an inescapable and incredibly profitable empire. So under CEO Tim Cook, you can see the strategy shift. The Jobs era was all about creating that next big thing. The Cook era is about optimizing the ecosystem. The goal isn't just to sell you a phone anymore. It's to sell you the iCloud subscription, Apple Music, the AirPods, the watch, to get the most value out of every single person who owns an Apple device.
And what's really fascinating is how their whole philosophy on money changed. Back in '96, debt was a sign that they were about to die. Under Tim Cook, taking on debt became a smart financial tool, something they could use to buy back stock and reward shareholders. What was once a liability became a managed asset. It's a total reversal.
And here's what that ecosystem strategy looks like today. I mean, the numbers are hard to even wrap your head around. Nearly $400 billion in revenue, almost $100 billion in pure profit, all while strategically managing over $100 billion in debt. The empire is complete. And that brings us to today. Apple has conquered the 2D world of our screens, so now they're placing massive bets on the future of computing itself. This chart shows you exactly where their money is going. Back in the '80s, they spent money on physical factories. In the 2010s, that shifted to giant data centers to power the cloud. But today, the huge investments are in things you can't see. Artificial intelligence and designing their own custom silicon chips, the very brains that will power all their future devices. Which leaves us with this one last huge question. With products like the Vision Pro and all this investment in AI, Apple is clearly not satisfied with just giving us a window into the digital world. They want to merge the digital and the physical. So the question is, after half a century of extending the human spirit through screens, can Apple now go on to define our very reality?